I'm probably what you would call a very keen amateur gardener. I did design this garden from scratch. It was previously just a completely flat mud pit. But there's definitely things that I've learned along the way, and I thought I would share my top tips with you. So the number one thing I would say is to hand over as much of your garden as possible to flower beds and planting. That may feel really counterintuitive, especially if you've got a small garden, but the more height and depth and layering you can get with plants, actually the bigger your garden will feel. Obviously, if you've got young kids and, all they want to do is kick a football around, you might be slightly restricted for a few years. But this is the thing that I think makes the biggest difference. I think one of the most important things is not to restrict planting to the edges of the garden. I've got this low euonymus hedge, which creates a boundary between one section of the garden and another. And then I've brought some of these trees into the middle of the garden with some lovely big square flower beds that you have to walk around. Repeating your planting around the garden is also really important. So planting in groups and then repeating those groups creates a real flow and cohesion. Having a restrained palette of materials that you repeat up and down the garden is also really important to create a lovely, calm, zen type of feel. So we have clay pavers and gravel with a little bit of decking as well. Creating a journey through the garden is also something that makes it so much more interesting. So walking around objects, having planting that comes into the middle, it's so much more interesting than just having a single path up through the middle of the garden or a straight path down the side of the garden. Trees are so important. You need to get that structure and that height to create visual interest and to block some of the views. I've got 4 of these lovely Amelanchier lamarckii, and I would say they're essentially the backbone. Having structures like this pergola, these things create vertical layering, which just naturally draws your eye up and around and makes it feel so much more interesting. I think lighting can often get forgotten about, but obviously it really helps to extend the use of the space. So it's just as important to think about the type of lighting you want, wayfinding, lighting a dining table or outdoor kitchen. But obviously nowadays there's such brilliant solar lights as well. And then thinking about sounds in the garden as well. Obviously you've got the rustling of the trees and the leaves and everything, but having some bubbling water creates a lovely, relaxing atmosphere. So that's it. I hope that was really helpful. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but these are just some of the things that I've learned from designing and then working and maintaining our garden for the last 3 years.